Hi, I'm Melissa Chambliss, and I'm with Together We Will, Southeast Ohio in Cincinnati. And I am here with Councilman Young this evening. So we're going to give it just a minute before we get started in the actual interview portion of this, just to give time for the other groups to join and to post onto their pages. As most of you who follow us know, we post to Together We Will Cincinnati, Southwest Ohio. We also post to a couple of indivisible groups, and then a lot of other folks that are interested in hearing what those that are running for city council and mayor and other candidates that we've interviewed, they also post. So really exciting. We end up getting at least in front of almost 12,000 people, so in and around the area, so that's super exciting. So just a quick update on how this is going to work for anyone that is new to this process. So we'll kind of go through a brief introductory. I'll kind of go through your bio a little bit. We'll also give it to Councilman Young to introduce himself just a little bit, and then we'll go into the questions. The questions were actually compiled from our group. We posted several months ago when we started this process of if you could talk to someone who was running for city council, what kind of questions would you have for them? Some of the questions you'll find that are definitely something that you can impact and that you can help make decisions for our city. And then some of the questions are just because they want to know. They want to know kind of where you stand on some topics that maybe it's something that you can't necessarily control or put in action because it's outside of your purview as city council. But, you know, it's nice to know who you're voting for as a person. I think we all recognize the importance of that, even more so this year. So, as always, if you want to ask a question, we have some compiled questions, but we'll stop those questions and we'll answer any of the Facebook Live questions as they happen, because we do believe that, you know, audience participation and member engagement is really crucially important. If you don't have the answer, or if it's something that you want to just kind of defer to, that's fine. We can follow up always and answer that question on the actual post. Also, for those of you who probably noticed, we're missing our great interpreters, which, by the way, they volunteer to help us with this. So they were unable to make it tonight, but we will post a transcript. So hopefully we'll get that up as soon as possible, so it's more accessible. I'm going to just check in here with the crew. All right, we're good to go. So, so for those of you who are just joining, I am here with Councilman Wendell Young, who is currently a Cincinnati City Council on the Cincinnati City Council and also running in November. He was appointed to Cincinnati City Council in June of 2010. It was a vacancy, he was filling a vacancy, and he was appointed into that, but then he was elected in 2011. You are a lifelong resident.
I am.
So you grew up in Avondale?
Yes.
Ah,
Not
great.
far from here.
Yeah, and attended Cincinnati Public Schools. That's great. And enrolled in the Air Force. After the Air Force, which you served with honors, you became a police officer in Cincinnati for 25 years. I bet you have a ton of stories.
Oh, a couple.
I know. I can just imagine. Served various roles within the Cincinnati Police Department. You were beat officer, a detective, undercover. I bet that's the really juicy stories that we'll have to talk maybe afterwards on that. And then a school resource officer. In 1994 until 1999, you became the Assistant Director of Personnel Equal Employment Opportunity Officer for the City of Cincinnati. And then in 1999 to 2000, you returned to the Police Department to be the Assistant to the Police Academy Commander. 2000, you joined the Metropolitan Sewer District of the Greater Cincinnati as a Training Institute Director and Diversity Manager. Wow. So maybe I should basically ask, what haven't you done? Right?
A lot.
I mean, that's a lot, and we're, like, not even done yet. So you've definitely been out there and serving in a lot of ways. So definitely very impressive. Been a part of many organizations. President of the Sentinel Police Association, president of the Cincinnati branch of the NAACP, two-time president of the Cincinnati chapter of National Forum for Black Public Administrators, and then a former board member for the National Black Police Association and Cincinnati's retired senior volunteer. So you've got quite the impressive background.
Thank you.
I really appreciate your time today. We were super excited to know that you were interested in speaking with us, and I know we have a lot of people out there that are really excited to hear where you stand on a lot of these issues, a lot of these important questions. So
Well, I'm glad you want to talk to me, so that's fine.
So I'll turn it over to you for a minute or two, and you feel free to introduce yourself and talk about a little bit about you and kind of what you stand for and why you're so passionate to have this many years of service, really.
Well, actually, you've told quite a bit. As you said, I grew up here in Avondale. Cincinnati is my home. Probably from the time I was 8 years old until right this minute, I've always been involved in some kind of public service. I learned it from my parents, especially from my father. Also, my school experience. I have the advantage of having been exposed to a number of things as a child that made me want to take ownership of my city when I grew up. I think it's experiences that a lot of children today just don't have. But when I was a kid, it was not at all uncommon for us to take field trips all over the city, whether it was Music Hall or the Art Museum or Eden Park or just wherever, Union Terminal, which is now the Museum Center. But each time we visited those places, we were not only told about the history of it, we were also told that someday we would grow up, didn't really think it was possible, and that it would be our job to take care of the things that make our city unique and different and a great place to live in. I actually believed that. And so a Cub Scout, later a Boy Scout, later on a member of the Air Force, as you said, and then the police department, more city service. But always I have looked for a way to try to leave the city better than I found it. I know that sounds trite, but the reality simply is I do love this city. I love the people in it. I want to serve. I enjoy serving. And it's been very good to me. There's truth to the old adage that when you do things for others, you get back tenfold. That has certainly been happening to me, and I will serve as long as I can.
That's fantastic. Thank you. I appreciate that. So for those of you who are just joining, I think we're live on all of the different sites. This is Together We Will, Cincinnati, Southwest Ohio. Melissa Chambliss, and I'm here with Councilman Wendell Young, who is running in November. And we're just going to jump right into the questions. As a reminder for everybody, if you want to ask a question, make sure that you click on the video and that you post the question below the video so that we'll see that and it'll feed right here, and we'll just jump into some of the questions, okay?
Sure.
So you talked about the city, and so this is a great segue because we've got quite a few questions about the city in and of itself. So a lot of our members of our group and other groups are kind of new to politics and maybe didn't quite pay as much attention to like city council and what are the responsibilities of city council. So maybe you could kind of start there. What are your responsibilities as a member of city council, and then what are you responsible for the constituents that voted for you?
Well,
and those that didn't, right?
I'm trying to give you the really short version here.
Okay.
We are a city manager form of government. Actually, Cincinnati gave that form of government to the entire nation. And so the city manager form of government was born here in Cincinnati. It basically operates as the city council is like a board of directors. The mayor, a little bit apart from that, he or she is not a member of city council. But we, as a body, set policy. We hire a professional manager, the city manager in this case, to actually run the city and carry out the policies that the mayor and the council set forth. So we're like the board of directors. And that's pretty much the way it works. Our responsibilities, in addition to enacting ordinances and so forth, is to basically listen to our constituents and deliver on the basic city services that everybody thinks we should deliver on, as well as do enhancements that make the city not only a wonderful place in terms of the functioning of government, but also makes us a great place to want to raise a family, to want to have a place to play, and to enjoy the quality of life, like our parks and our museums and so forth, the things that make life a little bit better. We're responsible for all of that. I enjoy it. We do not run in districts as people sometimes do in other cities. We all run at large here, and that basically means that we don't run against each other when we're running for a council seat. We simply run for the vacancies, and the top 9 are the ones who get seats on city council. The mayor, of course, runs differently. The mayor runs separately. For those paying attention, we just went through the primary, where we had 3 candidates. Now we're down to 2. In November, 1 will be selected to be mayor.
I actually saw you at the celebration.
Yes, that was fun.
Yes. It looked like it was fun. I had to work late, and so I didn't make it, but I did make it to the live feed of that celebration.
Extremely happy to see Yvette Simpson come out on top of that, and my hope is that in November she'll be the mayor.
Yeah, I do too.
Thank you.
So, moving on. So we'll kind of, you talked about your responsibilities, and then how do you plan to address the needs of all your constituents, not necessarily those that are just in the party that you affiliate with?
Well, the thing about Cincinnati is, and one of the things I like about running in an at-large system is, once you're elected, you're a council member not only for the people who voted for you, you're also a council member for those who did not. And so we actually represent the entire city. My intent is to serve everybody. I don't care whether they're Democrat, Republican, Independent, you name it. If you live here, my intent is to try to serve you well. And I believe I can say the same for the others I serve with, even though we're on different parties. Once you're elected, you try to find ways to work together. So party affiliation doesn't mean a lot to me. I'm a lot more concerned about being able to work with people who have the city's interest at heart, who want to do things to make the city better. Party labels mean nothing to me. If your heart's in the right place, I'll find a way to work with you. In terms of doing what people want, we have several ways of doing that. Social media, of course, is one way to learn what people think. Doing things like this is another way to find out. People contact us via email. I'm always out in the community somewhere, so I get a chance to talk to people one-on-one. So there's a lot of different ways that we have of gathering information. The fact that I actually live in the city also exposes me to things that sometimes people don't have to tell me about before I find out for myself. And so all of those things combined give me a way to try to figure out what I can do to help represent my city and to try to make as many people happy with me as possible.
Great, thank you. We're already getting questions from the live feed. I will tell you, right, everybody's really on the feed today with the healthcare vote that happened.
I'm sure.
And so we've got a very active membership, not just in the Together We Will Cincinnati group, but all the other groups. Lots of posting and lots of discussion around the healthcare vote. So after today's healthcare vote, one of the members is asking the questions. It's, of course, top of mind, and if it passes, healthcare issues will get very local. Is there anything cities should be doing to support those locally that might suffer?
Well, Cincinnati is one of the few cities that actually runs clinics, and we have several health clinics. Our health department operates those. And with the Affordable Care Act, it really made them, I don't want to use the word profitable, but in many cases, in most cases, they pay for themselves. With the new health care, I'm not really sure how that's going to work. But for people who need health care, who are not going to hospitals or their private doctor, the city's health centers offer pretty much care. The whole gamut for that matter, do everything but surgery. But the idea simply is it is a way to try to make certain that as many Cincinnatians as possible receive the health care they need. And so I don't know what the new act is going to look like and how that's going to affect us, but currently anyone who walks into a Cincinnati health clinic can be served.
Okay. That's good to know. And it's, somewhat reassuring that it was there beforehand. And so the assumption is that we would continue that.
Well, I'm an advocate for keeping them. I think they perform a valuable service. There are many of our citizens who would not access health care were it not for the health clinics. So I'm a proponent of keeping them.
Okay. So we're going to go to the next question, and you'll find that some of this is kind of skipping around a little bit, but that's okay. We want to make sure that we get to the questions of those that are watching us right now. So do you have any solutions for the many food deserts kind of plaguing the marginalized communities in Cincinnati?
Food deserts. That's one of the things that I've been working on for as long as I've learned the term. Been very closely connected with the Center for Closing the Health Gap and trying to work on that. And it's disheartening that in most of the cases, the major grocery chain here in Cincinnati, which is actually born here, has chosen to leave several of the inner city neighborhoods. In the course of doing that, they leave those neighborhoods without a grocery store, which means those populations who don't have access to transportation or who are immobilized in some way have extreme difficulty, and in many cases just no way, to get to a grocery store where they can get a diet of fresh fruits and vegetables and other healthy food options. They're stuck with going to corner stores and fast food outlets. We are learning that many of the diseases that I always considered to be old people diseases when I was a child are showing up in children. And they're showing up at a very young age and has everything to do with a lack of the ability to get a healthy diet. And so we've got children losing teeth. We've got children with high blood pressure, heart disease, things that you associate with old age and getting older, understanding that where you live in many cases will determine how long you live. And those are the things that have gotten me interested in that. The difficulty in replacing a grocery store is huge. What I have learned is that the margin for profit is very, very slim in the grocery business, as little as a half a cent on a product sometimes. So it's extremely difficult to get another chain store to come in, especially to a city like Cincinnati, and to go into an inner city area. It's difficult for small independent grocers to open a store even when they really want to. And we've contacted several who would like to do it. But the issue for them is getting the necessary capital to open a store. And so what I have learned is it is extremely difficult to replace a grocery store. The loss of a grocery store, though, is more than simply leaving people without access to healthy food choices. It also, in many cases, is a downward spiral for that neighborhood. So I've learned that grocery stores are not only a place to get food, they're gathering places. There are places where people meet and they socialize and they're able to check up on each other. They're in many cases the magnet for other small businesses in the area. They depend on the foot traffic that store can generate. When the store leaves, they begin to lose business. Some of them will close. That's the loss of jobs and other opportunities. And so a neighborhood can actually begin to die simply with the loss of a grocery store. The reverse is also true. A grocery store can breathe new life into a neighborhood. It can make the area valuable again. It becomes to be a place where people want to invest their time, where they're willing to buy a home, where they're willing to do the things that make a neighborhood great. Neighborhoods are people. Grocery stores are really integral in not only populating a neighborhood, but as we started out saying, providing people with an opportunity to socialize, to get healthy food choices, to be close enough to a store where they can actually get what they need in one trip. When you're faced with having to transfer buses 2 and 3 times, maybe take the kids along with you, you're limited in what you can take home. And so that makes a big difference. And the price of feeding your family goes up because the money you're spending on transportation, whether you're taking Metro or paying somebody to take you, that's money that you're not spending on groceries. And again, you're limited. So you can only buy things you just have to have. You don't have a whole lot of room for things that are a little bit different or a little bit nicer that just kind of give you a break from the monotony of just eating good food. So all of those things play into it. But the health of a community, I have learned, is directly affected by that community's ability to have a healthy diet.
So a follow-up question, as you were kind of giving that answer, and I completely agree. You know, just on a side note, I mean, I recently moved to Cincinnati just a couple of years ago, and we bought a house in Clifton, and one of the selling points for me was the fact that Clifton Market was in process of opening up, and it was less than a mile from my house, and I could walk there on the weekends, and, you know, it's so great, and now you see other businesses popping up around that because it's kind of like a magnet that brings people out. So what you said just really resonated with me. So
well, Clifton Market's an especially great one because we actually had a lot to do with that store being able to open. It was Keller's IGA for years and years and years up there. And when that store closed, I was able to join with a significant number of people who wanted the governor to take a hand in trying to keep a store there. Went to Columbus a few times to lobby for that. We were not successful, but I worked with them and continue to work with them to get that store open. So it's open now. I urge people to go to Clifton Market and take a look at what a co-op can look like. It's a store different from any other we have in Cincinnati. It's actually owned by the people who use it. You don't have to live in Clifton to buy a share. The shares are inexpensive. But once you are, quote, an owner, you can make a loan to the store. You can actually make a profit off of the loan that you give. And of course, when you shop there, you're actually paying yourself. But they have wonderful food choices, and they have specialized food choices, which means that they're doing the research to find out what people who shop there want to make certain they have it. And so it's just a neat place to go, and it really gives you a good idea of what a neighborhood grocery store should look like and feel like.
Yeah, it is really cool.
If you haven't been there, you just have to go.
Yeah. And so on that note, one of the members on the page is asking, is there money available for those who want to open a store? Is there funding? Is there some type of grants or monies or something like that from a city perspective, or perhaps other things that you're aware of?
The city can provide incentives, and we have access to grant money, but it is not enough. It's one of the reasons we don't get people opening stores right away.
Right.
They do have to come with some resources or access to resources. It's not an easy thing to do. The city will not and cannot fund the entire bill. One of the things that did bother me, though, was that when Clifton Market was really close to having all the capital they needed, the mayor vetoed the $500,000 they were asking the city to put in. So I don't think the city of Cincinnati has an appetite for, quote, investing in a grocery store. But we do have the appetite for creating the environment in which a grocery store could be successful. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of planning. If it was easy to do, we would have done it already. But there are several on the council, myself included, who would really like to work to see that every neighborhood has a grocery store. It's hard work. We will get there. It's one of the things that I like to do. I tend to take on long-term projects, but I want to do the things that I think at the end of the day I can look back and say I had a hand in that, and it was good.
Mm-hmm. So, speaking of having a hand in kind of developing cities and areas of the cities, how do you feel about the development in Avondale? And are there plans to include low and middle income rentals?
Well, development in Avondale is not what it should be. Avondale is one of the communities that's been neglected for a long, long, long time. The neighborhood is now becoming attractive thanks to the Martin Luther King Exchange that is beginning to open up. I think northbound 71 is now open from that. Southbound should be opening up pretty soon. That opens up the whole, what they call, uptown area. Makes Avondale ripe, I think, and attractive for development. The question becomes, what kind of development? And one of the things that always troubles me is neighborhoods, especially underserved neighborhoods, appear not to have a lot of voice in what development looks like. So I want to make certain that Avondale, Evanston, Walnut Hills, the adjoining communities have an opportunity to really be at the table and talk about development that's going to be meaningful. Often development is good for the business that wants to develop, but they don't really bring anything that enhances the neighborhood. So people in the neighborhood don't benefit from the jobs that are promised. And oftentimes we're told this business will bring 600 jobs. Well, they bring 600 jobs, but they bring in their own people. And so people in the neighborhood don't get the opportunity to have 600 jobs available to them. Other improvements in the neighborhood don't necessarily happen for the people who live there. So at the end of the day, what you get is a nice-looking business, but it's not a part of the neighborhood. It doesn't feel like it's a part of the neighborhood. So neighborhood people feel like development is not for them. Really want to work to change that. Want to find a way to really bring neighborhoods to the table. And I don't think Cincinnati's done a good job of that. I'd like to take the lessons we've learned from Over the Rhine, which everybody is talking about, and lessons we've learned from the banks in terms of how to do development, but at the same time, make sure we're more people-friendly. We've got to find a way to interest developers in developing properties that are people who are working every day. We need workforce housing. We need affordable housing. And developers aren't necessarily really wanting to do that because I don't think we've done a good job of finding a way for them to turn a real profit. They make profit on market rate housing, which for the most part is out of the range of people who currently live in a neighborhood. So now we begin to talk about gentrification, how that makes people feel. So we're developing neighborhoods and pushing people out. To me, that's not a good plan. That's not what we really want to do. I think it's going to take a concerted effort and an administration that really cares to make certain that we find a way to put the brakes on that and develop our neighborhoods in a way that enfranchise the people who live there to enjoy the benefits of an improved neighborhood, while at the same time inviting people to a neighborhood who've not been there, who can really afford to pay their way. I believe in mixed income as well as integrated neighborhoods.
Good. Well, I think we've got everybody on a roll with the neighborhood. So we got another question about neighborhood. This is great. I mean, tons of interaction on this. So is there anything I can do about rental homes in my neighborhood with absent landlords?
Yeah, so the city has a neighborhood enhancement program, which has a couple of bugs that are being worked out, but it's a really good program for dealing with that. Our building inspections department will respond to any complaint about those kinds of properties. So just give the city a call and let us know. I think you'll get pretty good response on that. We also have a program that takes to task many absentee landlords, especially banks, that often will buy up tracts of properties, and then you really can't find out who owns what. They don't take care of the property. It's a real problem, especially in neighborhoods that are undergoing transition. In neighborhoods that are more affluent, it's an issue because vacant properties tend to drag down property values. And all of those kinds of things make any neighborhood less desirable. So we all have an interest in doing everything we can to make our neighborhoods as attractive as possible.
Good. Solving problems here. So, we're going to go back to some of our questions that we had gathered ahead of time now. So we'll see what else we get from the Facebook Live series. So how will you guarantee that you're working for your constituents and not special interest? And how do we hold you accountable, right?
Well, I think, first of all, I consider the constituents to be the biggest and best special interest group out there. So the term special interest doesn't bother me. But I believe that I work very well for the largest group of Cincinnatians. And it's selfish on my part. I mean, the things I do for other people benefit me too. I live here. So if the police department or our safety forces are not what they need to be, I'm just as much at risk as everybody else. And so is my family and my friends and my neighbors. So I want to have those be good. If we're not picking up trash the way we need to, if we're not paving our streets the way we need to, I'm affected by all of that. If our transportation is not what it needs to be, I'm affected by that. I'm a lifelong Cincinnatian. So I didn't come here for just a short term to get into politics and then go off somewhere else. I'll be here when my political time is up. So as I said before, I want to leave the city better than I found it. It means doing everything I can do now to make the city the kind of place I want to live in. But more importantly, the kind of place I can encourage my children to stay here and raise their families in, as opposed to looking to someplace that they consider to be better. So at the end of the day, the way I represent people is to make certain that everything I do makes me want to live in the city where I'm a council member. And if I'm able to do that, I think I serve the biggest number of people the best way I can. I'm a politician. I can't do everything that pleases everybody. No matter what I do, I realize there are people who will not appreciate my efforts. But I think that my ability to get elected shows that I please enough people, that the people in Cincinnati grant me the privilege of serving them. And I take that privilege seriously, and I work on that the best way I know how to do every day. What I love about being a council member, I know that every day I get a chance to make a difference in somebody's life. If I don't get it right today, I get a chance to go tomorrow and try to fix it.
Great. So what's the best way that we can communicate with you, your constituents?
Well, I'm old school, so if you know me personally, call me on the phone. But the reality is,
you're on Facebook Live.
I'm easy to reach, and I appreciate an opportunity like this. But catch me on email, wendell.young@cincinnati-oh.gov. Call my office 513-352-3466. There is Facebook, and whatever else you find available. The thing I like about being a local government official, I am really accessible. You're likely to bump into me almost anywhere, the gas station, the grocery store, walking down the street. I mean, I spend a lot of time out and about in this city. So I'm not trying to hide. I'm easy to find. But certainly you can reach me via telephone at my office, or you can hit me up with an email. We do respond.
All right, great. So what's your plan for the city on taking on racial healing in this community, and how does it differ from what's been done in the past?
Oh, I don't know that anybody has the answer to that. I mean, if I did, I probably wouldn't be a council member. I'd be off making sure all the rest of the nation was able to get along. But Cincinnati is a great city to live in. I want to say that up front. I've had an opportunity for a long time to know what kind of city we work in. As a Cincinnati police officer, I've seen this city at its best and at its worst. What I know is that Cincinnati is populated with good people who, for the most part, really do want to find a way to get along. You do have that population, however, that makes getting along different, makes it difficult. We do have institutional racism that we have to deal with, that we need to confront. We have real issues, but we also have the willingness and the ability to do something about it. But if you say to me, what am I going to do personally? Personally, I'm going to be the best person I know how to be, because I think that's the best way to be an ambassador for the change I want to see. I think other people want to do the same thing, but I'm certainly going to continue my involvement with organizations that have at heart finding ways for us to live and work together harmoniously. I certainly have interest in doing the individual things that I can do and encouraging others to do that. Certainly ordinances, if they need to be enacted, that are new ones. But for the most part, at the end of the day, racial issues boil down to people having an opportunity to interact with each other in a positive way. You have to foster as many of those opportunities as possible. But all over this nation, that's an issue. And so I find it really unfair if people expect me to solve the problem, expect me to be willing to help solve the problem. I wish I had the answers. I don't.
Mm-hmm. So how do you feel about Cincinnati's sanctuary city status?
I think the sanctuary city is a good thing. Cincinnati has a history of being a sanctuary city. Everybody talks about, of course, the Underground Railroad, and Cincinnati certainly was a station on the Underground Railroad. But for me, what it really says to me is that in a nation of immigrants, no matter how we got here, and I did not come, at least my ancestors did not come voluntarily, but we are here. We need to find a way to make it work. But I think the lessons learned from everybody's strife is that we have nothing to gain by making life miserable for others. So as a sanctuary city, it only means that we're not going out of our way to, quote, identify people who look like they don't belong in an effort to send them back. That's the job of the federal government. Our local police department and our resources are thin. We don't have and should not have to shoulder the responsibility of figuring out who belongs here and who does not. For me, that's difficult anyway, because it harkens back to a time when anybody could say, show me your papers, and if you couldn't produce them, there were real issues for you. My concern is that if you live in the city of Cincinnati, regardless of your immigration status, we will treat you as a human being. We will not go out of our way to see you deported. The other thing that people need to know, however, is sanctuary city does not mean we're going to disobey the law. So if your immigration status is in jeopardy and you commit a crime, you'll be treated like any other criminal. If that means you end up being deported, then you're going to be deported. You're also going to be prosecuted for whatever it is you did. It simply means that we're not going to tie up our resources chasing down people and trying to determine whether they belong here. Beyond that, it does several things for people who are undocumented. It permits them to live in the city understanding that if they have issues, they can report those issues without fear that reporting that they've been the victim of a crime, that they have to have medical services, they can go to a doctor. They don't have to worry about doing those kinds of things. And because of that, they find themselves no longer living here. That's not what the city of Cincinnati does. So becoming a sanctuary city was my idea. The mayor supported that, and Cincinnati became a sanctuary city. I think it's a good thing.
All right, so I'm going to transition. We'll kind of transition into health and safety here in just a moment, but there's been a question outstanding that came from the Facebook Live post. And so one of the questions is are you for expanding the reentry programs for those who have felony records and can't find employment?
Of course. I mean, one of the things that our justice system alleges is that when a person has, quote, paid their debt to society, that they come back as a whole citizen. The reality is that after a person has served their time for whatever the crime was, they can't put the past behind them. And so that means that we doom a person who has committed a crime and wants to do the right thing. We've made it difficult for them to do that. In many cases, they cannot obtain the license they need. I mean, it was strange to me to find out if you wanted to be a barber and you're a convicted felon, that can be difficult to do, or a hairdresser. Or a licensed almost anything. Now, I'm the first to agree, if you're a thief, you should not have a job that says you need to count somebody else's money, but it doesn't mean you can't be an electrician. It doesn't mean you couldn't be a plumber. It doesn't mean you couldn't be a cement finisher. It should not mean that you can't have a white-collar job somewhere. We have to find a way to permit people to re-enter society and bring with them the dignity that work brings. But if we're going to constantly stigmatize people because of what they've done in the past, that not only feels unfair, it costs all of us. Because people who cannot find employment will still live. They're going to eat. They're going to feed their families. If they can't do it legitimately, they'll do it illegally. But they're going to do it. We have the wherewithal and the ability as a society to welcome people back into this society after they've paid their debt and to treat them like the human beings they are. People who don't deserve that treatment will end up going back to jail. But significant numbers of people would not go back to jail and would not repeat their criminal ways if they had real pathways to success, real opportunities for employment. And Cincinnati is blessed. We have a number of employers who will hire convicted felons. And of course, there are felons who are entrepreneurs, have their own businesses, but we need to find a way to make certain that those individuals not only get a chance to work, but they get the opportunity to have their dignity restored, that they realize that they're allowed to vote, that they can be productive citizens, and that most of us are willing to give them that opportunity. In many cases, that's all it takes.
That's great. I appreciate that, and that really resonates with me as far as people make mistakes and can come back from those mistakes. And
it's not always a mistake.
Right.
Some people intentionally do wrong things, but they learn the error of their ways and they want to change.
Right.
So for some people it's a mistake, for some people it's not. But when you've done your time and you come back, if you really want to be productive, we should make that as easy as possible.
Yeah, good. Thank you. So we're going to kind of transition to another section around health and safety and kind of accessibility. We kind of have our categories that people kind of hit on. So what's the city's responsibility related to public health?
Well, I think that responsibility is huge. I mean, we have a health department that is really charged with overseeing the general health of the city. That's a very general way of talking about what they do. But, when people decided to move to cities, it changed a lot of things. Because closer contact means that there's a lot more opportunity for things to go wrong with your health. Your environment becomes especially important now. In a rural setting, you don't have the contact with other people, so you don't always have the opportunities for the bad things to happen. But in an urban setting, where we share so many things, so we live close together in apartment buildings, we're closer together in neighborhoods, we share a lot of spaces in restaurants and churches, on public transportation and that sort of thing. Without a health department to help us keep track of what's going on in our city, we'd be in terrible shape in terms of just trying to handle communicable diseases, which can just wreak havoc on cities. And if we look back in our history, we can see that many of the issues that existed before don't exist now, mainly because of not only a city health system, but a national health system that helps all of us to be safer and not to have to deal with issues like cholera and things that took people out before, diphtheria, things we didn't have a cure for, we do now. Mm-hmm. But the Cincinnati Health Department has done and continues to do a wonderful job of monitoring public health and keeping all of us as safe as possible in terms of what you can do in terms of medicine.
Okay, great. So just following up on that as far as what the city's doing, to kind of address some of those kind of systematic kind of health issues. One of the other questions that we had is what will you do to help combat kind of the heroin epidemic?
Well, obviously I'm supportive of any effort that works on that, but I'm not losing sight of the fact that in addition to the heroin epidemic, we've had epidemics in this city that have involved minority population for years. Never got this kind of attention. Heroin certainly is a problem. It certainly is, as is cocaine, and as are many, many pills that we don't necessarily spend a lot of time talking about.
Right.
But opiates, without doubt, are the big issue right now. So we need to do what we're doing, and that is that we spend a lot of time trying to educate people. Please just don't do that. Don't get involved. Don't go down that road. The city is very supportive of, I apologize for that.
Hey, we're live. Things happen.
We're in my house, folks. Things happen.
Somebody's trying to reach their councilman now.
We're supportive of state and federal efforts, and certainly doing our part to make certain that we're doing everything we can to fight this opiate epidemic. We're spending a lot of time on Narcan. We're educating people, as I mentioned before. Again, our health department has been very active in trying to help to find ways to bring us more to the forefront. We're doing things with our police and fire departments, as you know.
Yeah.
There have been opportunities for citizens to get training and in some cases have the Narcan available. So I think the city is doing everything it can do in terms of the resources it has. But at the end of the day, this is a matter of personal responsibility. And so I believe that a lot more education is needed on top of what we currently do to try to convince people not to take that first step, not to do that first hit, not to associate with people who have a tendency to want to do those things. There's just so much that needs to happen that government can't do for people. So for the most part, we treat the symptoms. But the real prevention needs to begin at home.
Okay, thank you. So how will you support diversity training for law enforcement officers and first responders in dealing with kind of mental illness, unconscious bias, etc.?
Well, I think the training the city offers in those areas is very good. The issue you have oftentimes is that the selection of personnel is key. So if you are a person with biases and you don't want to work on those, we can't necessarily discover that when we hire you. That's something we're going to learn as you continue in employment.
Right.
We've got to be willing to really tackle those individuals who either will not or cannot respond to the training and do what's necessary there. But I've said that. Let me also be very clear that the majority of our Cincinnati employees who interact with the public do things the right way. And so when you look at it that way, what you realize is that the city employment is simply a microcosm of our city at large. So if you took all the residents of Cincinnati, you would find that the majority of them want to do the right thing. They want to do unto others as they want to have done unto them. There are a few who don't abide by those rules. If you look at our employees, you'll find the same thing. The majority are doing what they need to do. But I believe we need to be tough for those individuals who don't want to play ball. And we need to find incentives for those who do, and I think we do that. The training we offer, I think, is top-notch, to always be on the outlook for ways that we can do things better. But at the end of the day, we need to make sure we just hire the right kind of people. And I think we've done a fairly good job of that. There will always be issues. We have to deal with them.
Okay. So what programs would you propose, it's kind of in tangent with that, what programs would you propose or implement to reduce the number of incidents of gun violence in the city? Some of that as it relates to, the Cincinnati police shootings, and then some of it's related to kind of a dual question. Some of it's related to just in general with society.
Well, police shootings, that's something we can definitely do something about. And I think that the city's done a good job of reducing questionable shootings, I'll put it that way. We're always one incident away from basically having to start over again. But our police-community relations, I know that we continue to work on. Depends on what part of the city you live in as to whether you believe they're good or okay or not good at all. That's always going to be an issue. I used to be a very hands-on part of that issue, so I understand it well. But in terms of the gun violence, I don't believe there is a real answer for that. I do believe it would be a whole lot worse if we were not doing the things we do to try to reduce that. So there are gun buyback programs. People are controversial in that regard about whether it does any good. We have the SERVE initiative here in Cincinnati that some people are not certain how much good it does, but my belief is without those two things, it could be worse. There's also people trying to intervene every day to get people to choose different paths. Many people, some in organizations, some just almost one-on-one are involved. At the end of the day, I really don't know what the answer is. All other crime in Cincinnati, for the most part, is steady or being reduced. Gun violence is just something that not only is Cincinnati wrestling with, but so are all the other major cities. Everybody's trying to find a solution. Nobody has found one. it doesn't mean we can't keep trying. What we are learning, I believe, is that we cannot arrest our way out of this problem. But the sociologists don't have the answers. I don't think it's fair to expect police to have the answers. Society at large, we do have the answers. We know that there are things we could do. But there are so many things that are broken. So many people who grow up feeling that they have no other option but to do what they do. I happen to believe they have a lot of other options, but they have to believe that. And they don't feel that they have them. So for many people, this is a way to get over. For some of them, it's what they believe is a quick buck. For some, it's what they think they have to do. But for whatever the reasons they're involved in it, society at large appears not yet to have an answer.
So we do have a follow-up question from the Facebook Live on the sanctuary city that you talked about. So we're just going to kind of go back and touch on that. So what value does the sanctuary city designation have when our county jail honors ICE detainers? What have you done, or what could we do to coordinate with the county to extend sanctuary status so that it has a real-world impact on detainees?
Well, the city of Cincinnati is a part of Hamilton County. So as a city of Cincinnati Council member, I can help to control what the city of Cincinnati does. But we have no control of what the county does. And the county, of course, is governed by commissioners. And the sheriff works for them. So the city does not run a jail. And because we don't run a jail, in my opinion, it does not make sense that we would spend our time and our resources trying to find ways to lock people up because of their immigration status. However, if the sheriff chooses to do that, that's on the sheriff. What people should understand, however, is that though our police officers are not going around trying to find out who belongs, if the sheriff or other valid law enforcement official should come across someone within our city limits and request our assistance, we will assist with that particular arrest, but we're not going to initiate those actions. But we don't have the ability to tell the sheriff what to do, and I'm not looking to do that. We have enough to do just trying to make sure the city of Cincinnati operates as it should, and we need to respect the lines of government. And so the county respects what the city does. We need to respect what the county does, but within the corporate limits of the city of Cincinnati, our police officers, and that's where their jurisdiction is, we're not going to be involved in that. It is true, the jail is located in the city, but again, the city is a part of the county. The county has a right to have a jail in the county, which happens to be in our city. They get to run their jail as they see fit.
Okay. So I'm going to transition into a few other questions because I know we've probably got maybe like 15 minutes.
Time's going fast.
I know, doesn't it? It's because this is so enjoyable. So, so we have several questions on kind of women's health. Supporting women's health in Southwest Ohio, supporting Planned Parenthood, supporting legislation around the LGBTQ community. In interest of time, maybe you could just talk about kind of your values, because I think at the beginning I said, some of the questions are things that you can definitely have an impact on, and some of them is just philosophically we want to get to know you and who's kind of going to be in office for us. So maybe you could talk a little bit holistically around what you support from those from women and transgendered, all of those types of. I think that's a lot.
If I sum it up in a nutshell, I'd simply say live and let live. I have enough to do trying to satisfy the God I serve and do what I can to get to heaven. It is not my job to judge others, and I don't. So I believe that if you treat me like a human being, it gives me an opportunity to treat you like a human being. That's what I do. In terms of women's health, I can't have a baby. And having seen that up close and personal, I'm glad I can't have a baby. But what that leads me to tell you simply is that I think a woman deserves to have a right to do with her body as she sees fit. I think that's between her, her God, and her doctor. I don't really see a place for me in that. And I've always told young men, when you decide to have a family, do that with someone who really wants to have your child. It does not make sense to me that you should feel that you can tell somebody what to do with their body. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a brother. And in none of those cases would I want to see any of the women I care about be forced to do something with their body that they don't want to do. And I can tell you that no man has to deal with that. If there's something inside of me that I don't want here, if I can afford it, if a doctor will do it, I can have it taken care of. And I don't have to ask my wife or my mother or my daughters or my sisters for permission. In terms of I can't remember the acronym right
LGBTQ.
now. In terms of them, I don't see them as different than anybody else. Who you love, I could care less. What I am concerned with is that you treat it as fairly as is humanly possible. You don't lose any rights because of who you love. And I am one who will make certain that your rights are observed. I think, just overall, that's kind of where I am. If you're trying to be a law-abiding citizen, I'm going to do everything I can to make certain you're treated fairly. And I don't care what your immigration status is. I don't care who you love. I don't care about your race or your gender or your religion or anything else. I believe as a government official, my job is to make certain that the laws apply to everybody equally. That's what I think my job is. That's the way I go to work every day. And I want your vote. I really, really, really do. But if you want somebody who just wants to serve special interests, I'm not the guy you're looking for. Give your vote to somebody else.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to skip down just a little bit to transportation, just because this has been such a hot topic in all of the video interviews that we've done or the Facebook Live that we've done, and so I don't want to leave that out because I'm sure I'll hear about it later from some of the people in the group. So how will you help alleviate poverty in Cincinnati by improving the bus system and public transportation? That's been discussed a lot.
It
right?
is, and the reality is that public transportation needs to get people from where they are to where they want to be. In many cases, that means getting people from home to a job. What we've learned over the past several years is that there are thousands of jobs available that Cincinnati people cannot get to because they rely on public transportation, and public transportation does not take them there. That is huge for the city. People who cannot work, for the most part, will be poor. People who can work, not only will they not be poor, they'll be able to pay for the services that all of us need. And so it's incumbent upon everybody to make it as convenient as possible for people to get where they need to be. I believe, however, in a robust transportation system, that means giving people lots of options. That's why I believe in bicycles, and I believe in buses, and I believe in streetcars, and I believe in trains. I believe in trails. I believe in everything that helps to connect people, that gives people options, that makes it as easy as possible for people to move throughout the city, whether they own a car or not. And so that's how I feel about public transportation. It's not a matter of either or. It's a matter of having everything available, that people have options, that they can move around and get where they need to be.
Okay. I'm going to go to a couple of questions here on the live, so we don't miss those. But how is the city attracting new business to the city, and how do we balance development with keeping neighborhoods healthy and affordable?
Well, that's a big question. Obviously, one of the things that we're doing is, success begets success. Cincinnati is becoming very attractive to a lot of people. We still aggressively recruit companies to come here. But at the same time, we're being discovered. And a lot of people who come here like what they see and they relocate here. So those things are happening for us. That also means we're bringing in more people. I just talked with somebody from our public school system today who told me that Cincinnati is welcoming about 1,000 kids a year into the system.
Wow.
That means we're bringing families to Cincinnati. That's a good thing. In terms of how to make certain that neighborhoods are attractive for development, we talked about that earlier. But it means finding a way to make certain that we market our neighborhoods to developers the same way we marketed the banks and Over the Rhine. There are lessons we can learn from that we need to do. But Cincinnati is fortunate. This is a city that has wonderful neighborhoods, great housing stock. We're only 78 square miles. So we're not that big, and it's not impossible to get around. But Cincinnati was designed with business districts. We can easily go back to those. And you see the success of those in Hyde Park and Oakley. That can happen all over the city. It is a matter of those of us in government, and for that matter in business, being champions of our city and taking every opportunity we can to show people the benefits of being here. We lead in green construction. We're attractive for people who are involved in electronics, internet, Wi-Fi, that sort of stuff. Obviously, we're doing a good job on construction. Our front door is looking better all the time. We have a great riverfront, great parks. We have wonderful culture in this city. We are, in many cases, a hidden gem that many people are beginning to discover, and they're learning about Cincinnati, what I've always known. It's a wonderful city with great people. We're a good place to live. We have great climate. We're relatively close to some of the major centers in the city. We're a few hours from Atlanta, a few hours from Chicago. We have an airport, albeit we can do better with it, but it is there. It gives us access not only to the country, but the world. Our interstate system is great. It runs right through the city. We have our river. So we're very attractive in a lot of ways, ways that people have known about for a long time, and in some cases, people are rediscovering. But Cincinnati is a great city. Take that piece and run with it.
All right. So, another question from the group here on the Facebook Live, and I just want to remind everybody we're probably going to wrap in just about 5 minutes. So, if you have any last questions that you want to ask, that we make sure we get it into the live feed, please do so. Okay. So, do you work with any youth groups?
No, I don't currently work hands-on with youth groups, but I work with organizations that are involved with youth. Mm-hmm. The first paid job I ever had, where I got paid with a paycheck, was at the Boys and Girls Club. Because, as a kid, I worked. I sold papers at 8 years old. Mm-hmm. And I cut grass and did all the other things that kids do. But I was 15 when I landed a job that actually got me paid with a paycheck. And that was the Girls and Boys Club. It was just the Boys Club then. And so I've been involved with kids ever since in a lot of different ways. Probably the highlight of that was when I was a school resource officer, when I worked with, I don't know how many young people. But over the years,
you did that with the police department.
I did.
Yeah.
But over the years, when I was Sentinel president, when I was NAACP president, certainly had the opportunity to work with young people. I've always enjoyed doing that. I've been supportive of efforts of other council members to work with youth, support their programs, vote for the funding, and so forth. So kind of paid my dues in that area, but am always willing to work with children. So I go to schools and read. I just had Donuts and Dudes a few weeks ago up at Pleasant Ridge Montessori School. I'm always open to any opportunity to work with young people because people worked with me, and in my case, I think it paid off. Mm-hmm. So I want to give back.
Great. All right, so I think we'll just wrap up with just one final question on public transportation, just to kind of wrap that up. And I know it feels like we're skipping around, but
I'm fine.
Yeah.
I wish you could answer everybody's questions.
Yeah.
Sure, I'm good.
Yeah. So, So we talked about public transportation, and you're a big believer in pathways to connect people in a lot of different methods. So, what public transportation initiatives are you supporting, or do you plan to kind of introduce?
I don't have anything I'm going to introduce. I really think that most of the things you can introduce have been introduced, but I do support all the efforts around public transportation. I am itching to find out what SORTA is going to do. I do believe that we've reached a point where city residents can no longer subsidize bus service for the entire county. So the city and the county have got to find a way to make bus service available to everybody, and everybody is paying their fair share. Again, I support all the other forms of transportation. I don't think that we're necessarily needing to introduce new legislation to come up with new transportation. We just need to continue to find ways to support what we have and enhance it and make it better.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I think we're going to wrap here now, but what I would like to do is just kind of turn it over to you just to kind of wrap for the last minute or so, just to make sure that you had a chance to really tell us everything that you wanted to make sure that we knew to get out and support you, okay?
Well, certainly I want people to vote for me, and if that's the opportunity to ask for a vote, here I am. Please vote for me. But I think there's good reason to do that. As I said early on, I'm not some person who's just in this for me. I really am trying to give back, and I've always done that. I was always taught to do that, and public service is something I really do enjoy. I think public service is a noble calling. To me, it's like the ministry or something. I mean, you really have to want to do this. Everybody can tell you how to do it better, but not many people will get in here and show you. So I think it takes a special kind of person who wants to be able to give back. I think I fit that mold. The things I want to do, in a nutshell, As I said before, is leave Cincinnati better than I found it. In that case, as a member of Cincinnati City Council, it means trying to make sure that our city is safe and that it's a clean city, that it's a welcoming and inviting city, that it's a city that nurtures people. It's a great place to raise a family. We don't control schools, but we do help to control the environment. And I want our schools to be situated in places where people feel safe going in and coming out. I want to work with our school board to ensure that our children get a quality education. I want to make certain that businesses that locate in the city of Cincinnati have all the advantages we can give them that make them want to stay, make them able to offer decent paychecks to people who work for them. They, in turn, can take those checks and help to make the city better. I want every neighborhood to have the amenities it needs. We don't have that currently in our city, but I'm working to that end. I want to work with people who believe that Cincinnati is a good place to live, who want to move the city forward. I want to work with the mayor and other council members who are as dedicated as I am to doing everything they can to make this a good city. But I've given my entire life to this city. I've literally fought wars on some of these streets to make this city better. I've met the worst of people. I've met the best of people. I've put some people off the streets of the city of Cincinnati who really don't belong to be there. You're welcome for that. But I've also met some wonderful, wonderful people in Cincinnati. I've met them of all races, of all incomes, in all the neighborhoods. I've worked this entire city. I know what it looks like in the daytime. I know what it looks like at night. And so when I tell you it's a wonderful city, that's not something I learned from somebody else. It's something I've experienced for myself. I continue to have faith in the city and all it has to offer. And I feel absolutely privileged to be able to represent the people of the city of Cincinnati as a member of Cincinnati City Council. I ask people to vote for me. I will continue to work to earn your vote. I will always try to make you proud.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Councilman Young. Really appreciate your time here. So,
Thank you.
for everybody, thanks for joining. It's a wrap. And if you didn't get a chance to see anything and you're just joining, please go back to the beginning. Thanks and have a good evening.